and welcome to your short evening wind down yoga class to help you calm down the mind and relax the body after a long day. If you're not already, we'll start in a cross-legged position. However, if you do find it difficult to sit in cross-legged for a prolonged period of time, you can either pop a pillow under the bum, which is also useful to have for the end whenever we do our Savasana, or you can simply come to a kneeling position. So from either of those positions, we will start to close down the eyes or take a soft gaze to the floor. As I go through and mention each part of the body, we'll just bring our awareness to there and we'll relax it a little bit further. Bringing our attention to the crown of the head, to the eyelids, softening them down, the cheekbones, unclenching the jaw, bringing the tongue away from the roof of the mouth. Relaxing down the shoulders, letting them feel heavy, dropping away from the ears. The elbows, the wrists, and the fingertips, relaxing. The rib cage softening down, the hip bones, the knees, the ankles, the feet and the toes. Each part of the body softening down, relaxing. Here we're going to start to elongate the breath, calming down the nervous system, letting the parasympathetic nervous system kick in to relax us after a long day. So as I count to 4, I want you to breathe in. And as you're breathing in, I really want you to focus on pushing the belly out and sending that breath into the lower part of the stomach, the abdomen. As you breathe out, we'll breathe out for a count of 5, and we'll really push all that stale air out of the lungs. So once you finish your next breath cycle, we'll breathe in, 2, 3, 4, pushing the belly out, and out, 4, 3, 2, 1, letting everything out. Breathing in, 2, 3, 4, pushing the belly out, and out, 4, 3, 2, 1. In, 2, 3, 4, and out, 4, 3, 2, 1. Continue these cycles in your own breath, in your own time. You can increase the inhale to 5 seconds and increase the exhale to 6 if you feel like you've got a little bit further to go. Just really focusing on sending the breath into the belly, expanding the lungs, and then when you're exhaling, really pulling the stomach in, pushing all the air out of the lungs. finishing off the cycle that you're on. Just taking a moment to notice any subtle differences in how the body and the mind feels. The lungs might feel that they've got a little bit more room expansion in them. The mind might feel a bit calmer and quieter. No judgment if not. We'll start to move the body now. If you're on your knees or you've got a pillow, you can just come back to that cross-legged position. Dropping down the chin, tucking it in towards the chest, letting the head hang heavy. Just noticing that very subtle movement creates a stretch in the back of the neck, slightly in the back of the shoulders. And as our neck is an extension of the spine, it expands the spine that little bit more. It's very subtle movement. Now taking the head over to the right hand side, so bringing the right ear towards the right shoulder. Bringing our right hand up and overhead, placing it very gently over the left ear. Dropping that left shoulder away from the ear. And again, this very minor movement, creating a stretch in the left hand side of the neck. Now we're not pushing down the head or pushing down the ear, we're just letting our hand rest on it to let gravity pull the side of the neck open. Remembering our deep breathing. Before we change to the other side, bringing the right hand back down to the mat. Their neck comes up and over. Left ear to left shoulder this time. Bringing the arm up and over to rest on the right ear. Really letting that shoulder drop away. Letting gravity pull it down to the floor is where you're creating the stretch here. You don't need to be pushing and pulling anything. Just knowing that this subtle movement, opening up the neck. Breathing deeply. And release. Starting to crawl the fingertips forward now. As far as our body allows, keep bringing the hands forward as far as we possibly can before we drop the forehead down towards the floor. Again, like myself, you might not get too far here, but really just pushing the sit bones and the hips down towards the floor and crawling those fingertips as far forward as you possibly can. Allows to stretch the whole way from the base of the spine, up right through the shoulders, the neck and the head, the whole back body. Really breathing in, expanding our lungs here. And breathing out, let gravity let you sink towards the floor slightly more. Breathing in, expanding the back body, stretching out. And breathing out, letting the head drop a little bit further towards the floor, melting down. Moving from here into our child's pose. So just rolling the hands forward a little bit further, coming onto the knees. Bringing the toes, the big toes together and pushing back, sending our hips back down towards the heels. Continuing with that breath of expanding the back of the lungs as we breathe in. And breathing out, melting towards the floor a little bit further. See if you can crawl your fingertips forward a little bit more.
deepening that back body stretch.
I'll just give a spin around. From here, we're going to start a cat-cow motion. So from here, we're going to ascend the sit bones up, keeping the spine nice and curled in, moving up into our tabletop position, but really pushing up and out of the shoulders, tucking the tailbone in, tucking the chin in, creating that cat stretch. Dropping through to cow, so sending the sit bones up, the belly down, shoulders away from the ears, looking up. Pushing back down to our child's pose and keeping that motion going. So back through child, curling the spine in, coming up into our cat pose, really pushing up and out of the ground, tucking that tailbone in. And now dropping the belly, head comes up, shoulders away from the ears, cow stretch. Sit bones back down towards the heels, child's pose. You know where you're going now, moving into that cat stretch. Move with your own breath here now. Dropping through when you're ready, breathing in, looking up. And continuing that motion back through our child. Up through cat, curling in, dropping the belly, moving our spine here, releasing any tension in any part of the spine. Let's do one more. And as you're curling up, feel each vertebra curling in. Dropping in through cow, looking up. And back down to child when you're ready. See if you can open the knees just a wee bit wider. Settling a little bit further down to the ground. Big breath in. And out through the mouth. Let it go. Let's do one more like that. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Moving into a side stretch, starting to crawl the fingertips towards the right hand side of the mat. It's just as far as the body allows. Again, we don't need to move too far here. Let's push the left hip towards the heels. Let's crawl the fingertips forward. And let's feel the stretch through the wrist, elbow, armpit, whole left side into the left hip. You can place your left hand on top of the right hand if you've got a little bit further to go. Breathe in, expand the lungs. Breathe out, melt down to the floor. Crawling over to the left hand side now. Crawling those right fingertips as far as they'll go. Really focusing on that right hip pushing towards the heel. And the wrist, elbow, armpit, side of the chest, hip bone expanding. And then we can place our right hand on top of our left hand if we've got a little bit more room. Back to center, crawl the fingertips back. Moving up to a downward dog now. Rolling the hands just a little bit further in so we can create that tension in the arms. So we're going to act like we're ripping the mat in half. Really creating that tension, straightening out the arms before we tuck our toes and send the hips up to the sky. Pushing back. Pedaling the feet if you would like. And really concentrating on opening the chest in this one. Bending your knees as much as you need to get a really good opening in the chest. Keeping that tension in the arms. Inverting here with our head below our heart. Starts to send the blood pumping around the body. And relaxes down our nervous system. Pedaling softly. Before we start to crawl the hands back towards the toes. Keeping a nice bend in the knees as we do so. Coming into a rag doll. So if you're comfortable with the hands on the floor, you can keep them there. Or what's even nicer is to hold on to the outer edge of the elbows. Let the crown of the head drop down towards the floor. And hips up towards the sky. Keeping with that inversion. You can rock from side to side here. You can shake the head no. You can nod the head yes, just to make sure the neck is nice and relaxed. Deep bend in the knees. If you want to release the upper body, we can stand on our palms. So bringing the fingertips in towards the toes with the palms facing up. We'll simply plant our feet as close to our toes, as close to the wrists as we can get them. Keeping a bend in the knees first of all, and then trying to straighten out the legs as much as you can. Really pushing those toes into the palms of the hands. You'll feel a release in the whole back body, particularly the shoulders and the upper back. Bend the knees down deeply. Breathe in and breathe out. Straighten the legs as much as you can. Really push those toes into the palms of the hands. Bend in the knees deeply. And straightening out the legs again. If you're standing on the hands, just untuck them. We're going to take the feet out wide to a wide-legged forward fold. So bring the feet wider than your hips. Keep your toes facing forward. We'll come up to a flat back here, so we'll come onto the fingertips. Straighten the back first of all. Then you can either stay on the fingertips, or if it's within your reach, you can plant the left hand down onto the floor. And the right hand comes up for a spinal twist. Right fingertips towards the ceiling. And if you can take the gaze up towards the right fingertips. Adjusting the feet as you need to. You can move the feet slightly further in. You can move them slightly further out to get you into this pose. And swapping out to the other side. Either right fingertips or right hand comes to the floor. Spinal twist to the other side. Let's do one more each side. Left hand comes down, right hand comes up. Take the gaze up if you can. And switch it out to the other side. Spinal twist, wringing out the spine. Bring the left hand down to meet the right. We will, I'll chuck my pillow out of the way, and we will heel toe the feet in. So using your hands, so you can heel toe the feet in until your heels are just a wee bit wider than the hips. The toes are pointed out the way, and we'll come down into a yogi squat. Now this one can be quite intense in the hips. So if it is, just keep the hands or fingertips planted onto the mat and just come in and out of it. as feels good. If not, we can settle in, or if you've got a block, a book, or a pillow, you can place it under the bum. If you're feeling comfortable here, we can bring our hands to a prayer position. Having those elbows on the inside of the knees, we can start to push the knees out, deepening the stretch a little bit further. I find it quite intense opening the hips, so I like to sway from side to side. Breathing really deeply, sending the breath to the hips. Final breath. Before we start to crawl forward into a tabletop position. Crawling forward, we can release one leg and then the other by simply coming onto the ball of the right foot, pushing the heel back, releasing out the right hip, holding for a breath, and switching out the leg, other side, release the left hip. Now we'll come into our pigeon pose. So right knee comes behind the right wrist, and right foot comes across the body slightly towards the back of the left wrist. From here, we start to crawl the left leg back, starting to create an open in the hips and a stretch of the glutes. Again, this can be quite intense, so if it is, I've lost my pillow. If it is, pop a pillow underneath the bum, just here, to allow you to really rest down, to prevent your body, if you don't have the pillow and you find this quite intense, your body tries to make up for it by swaying over to the side, and you're not getting the stretch in the right place. So please use props if they are around you, so you can really settle in and enjoy this pose. This is a great one. We keep looking forward here for a breath, just to make sure our alignment's correct in the hips. Again, we want to be having equal weight on both sides, so we're not overcompensating by moving over to the left-hand side. And then we can start to melt down and really enjoy this pose. This is one of the biggest muscles in the body that we're stretching right now. So breathe deeply. Open the back of the leg, the glute. Remembering when you breathe in, expand the back of the lungs. And when you breathe out, melt a little bit further towards the ground. One more breath, enjoy it. And then start to crawl the hands back up. Remove your block, book or pillow. And just come back through tabletop. Straight to the other side. Left knee behind left wrist. Crossing the left ankle just slightly behind the left wrist. Keeping a flex in the foot here to protect the knee joint and the ankle before we start to crawl the right foot back to as far as our body will allow, placing our prop here. If it's not so intense in the back of the hips and you're finding it more difficult to get the head down to the floor, then place the pillow, block or book in front of you. So again, we crawl our hands up, straight in the spine first, tuck the tailbone to make sure we've got the correct alignment. We've got equal weight on both sides of the hips. And then start to melt down towards the ground, placing your head on the pillow, even if it's just for comfort.
We can do that instead. Breathing in, expanding the back body and the lungs. Breathing out, melting into the floor. Final breath. Starting to crawl back up slowly.
Moving away any props. Simply now moving on to the left bum cheek. Swinging the right leg forward. Coming to a seated position. We can either cross our legs or we can bring the bottoms of the feet to touch. Holding on to the ankles here. Just letting gravity let the knees sink down towards the floor. Straightening the spine, opening the chest, looking up slightly, pulling a little bit towards the body. And then we can keep our legs in this position, this butterfly position, or we can straighten out the legs, but we're just going to come down to our Savasana. So coming down to lie on our backs, if you had a pillow handy, pop it underneath the head. You can keep this very gentle hip opener in your Savasana. If you want to release the lower back and the lower back is feeling tight here, we want to do the opposite actually. We want to take our feet wide to the edge of the mat and let our knees sink in. Just resting on each other. Or if you want to come back to your traditional Shavasana, legs straightening out, toes pointing slightly outwards, dropping towards the floor. We're lifting up the shoulder blades, tucking them in together, and coming back down to the mat, palms facing up towards the ceiling. Noticing each part of the body as I mention it, bringing your awareness there and gently relaxing it down. The crown of the head, the eyelids, the cheekbones, unclenching the jaw, the shoulders melting into the floor, the elbows heavy and soft, the wrists, the fingertips relaxing, the rib cage softens and melts down, the hips feeling heavy, the knees, the ankles, the bottoms of the feet, and the toes relaxing down. Taking a moment here to feel any differences between the start of the class and the end of the class. Just noticing how your mind and body feels. Laying here for as long as you want. Keeping those final moments of rest. If your mind starts to drift, just bring it back to the breath. Bring it back to pushing out the belly as you breathe in. And really letting all the air out of the lungs as you breathe out. again, staying here for as long as you would like. I want to thank you for following along with this class. Enjoy your evening. Namaste.